Hi, my name is Seth Bayer. I'm here giving you another presentation in winter snow sports accident reconstruction. I'm a professional engineer with Compass Consulting Engineers in Westminster, Colorado, right near Boulder. I still live in Boulder, Colorado. This is a photograph of me in the 1982 NCAA championships at Lake Placid, a race that I won. So I continued to keep my scholarship. This is my CV. I won't spend too much time going over it because you can stop and look at it anytime. Here's my contact information at the top. Feel free to email or call anytime if you have any crazy ski accident reconstructions you'd like to talk about or just hear some stories. So my history is I have a BS in mechanical engineering, University of Colorado. Worked in a lot of different fields over the years, doing some very interesting things. One of those areas was in the snowboard industry, where I got several patents. In the 90s, I was working with a company called Airwalk out of Carlsbad, California, and I had some inventions that were patented, and I sold to Airwalk, and then we produced them. I did 3 years of production with a factory in northern Italy, which was one of the best jobs ever. So the point of that is that I've got a pretty broad background in the winter sports industry. I've worked on crashes, snowboarding, skiing, lift accidents, inner tubing, snowmobiles, probably other things I can't even remember. So, but today I'm just going to present one skier to skier, no, actually skier to snowboard collision case. But a little background first. With regard to any skier collision, it's essentially based on trying to determine who was the uphill skier, and that's related to the Colorado Ski Safety Act, which is basically the same in all states, which basically determines that the definitions between skier, passenger, lift operator, things like that, and defines responsibility because of that. But the main thing is that each skier has a duty to maintain control of his speed and course at all times when skiing, and to maintain a proper lookout so as to be able to avoid other skiers and objects. However, the primary duty shall be on the person skiing downhill to avoid collision with any person or objects below him. I think about this as any participant on the slopes under the influence of gravity and their own control, whatever device they're using. So there's a few more rules to the Ski Safety Act, and you can either go through these later on your own or look them up. They're all pretty available. It boils down to what's called at this time your responsibility code, but it's had other names over the years. And as I said, any accident reconstruction is essentially concerned with who was the uphill skier in the time preceding the collision. So for any reconstruction, the elements, three primary elements are the humans, the equipment, and the environment. So any reconstruction will gather information and analyze it with respect to all three of these under the best circumstances. But with skiing and winter snow sports, sometimes environmental information's not available because of the nature of snow. It doesn't hold evidence like a roadway would, for example. So in any case, I work with what I get, and some cases it's less, in some cases it's more. Here's an example of some environmental information. This is not the case I'm going to present. This is just an exemplar incident diagram, and what it shows is blue circles where ski patrol took photos. They also identified in a separate log where these photos were with respect to this down here in the lower left, which was the point of rest of one of the skiers. That was identified here with GPS coordinates, so that's good environmental information. This is an example of some environmental imagery I obtained from Google Earth. I often do this in the preliminary phases of any investigation, so I can see the area in general, how it relates to the rest of the area, and scale some distances. In this case, I did it between lift towers, and then I can look at other objects and things like that that may be relevant. This is a Google Street View in Vail, Colorado. More and more, some of the more popular areas are getting Google Street View images, and that's probably a really good job to have if you work with Google. This is another environmental bit of information for the case we're actually going to talk about right now. And you can see there's toboggan tracks. Looks like the toboggan was put sideways here and they loaded this woman on. This doesn't provide a lot of information, but does show something about the slope, how wide open it is, skier traffic at the time, some general information. Same investigation. This is looking down the hill with a collision victim being removed on a toboggan. This is an example of a LiDAR scan we did when we were investigating a ski lift accident at Vail, Colorado. This is actually a conglomeration of several scans from the LiDAR, which we then put together and assemble a virtual model. This was a ski lift loading incident, actually a fatal accident. This is just another view of that LiDAR scan. You can see these black circles. That shows locations where the scanner was set up. It doesn't record information directly below it, but what it does is gets data points, millions of points for any one scan, and takes photographs so that those points are known in space and can be identified. This then goes into AutoCAD and into other programs if we do decide to enhance the graphics or do animations. This is an image from that last scan showing the loading area of a chairlift from the perspective of a lift operator. Notable here is that the seat bottom is in the folded up position, which led to problems for two people that were loading because the operator was not present or attentive at that time. Okay, the other thing we look at is equipment damage, and this is important. It's analogous to examining and evaluating the damage to a car, for example, that's been involved in a collision. It can answer questions about force magnitude, force direction, the object that created the damage, such as shape, size, color, material, and can be very useful in solving a case, which is going to be the case that I'm going to present right now. It was based primarily and almost solely on physical information. So this is a skier versus snowboarder collision where the plaintiff alleges he was hit by a skier. He was riding a snowboard. The skier was obviously on skis. She was a woman. The plaintiff had a GoPro camera, but he maintained the whole time that he didn't have it with him or it wasn't being used. There was no additional witnesses, but the equipment was preserved. So basically what happened in this case is a skier and a snowboarder proceeding down the slope that was shown in those photographs just that I showed you where the toboggan was in them. The woman was skiing downhill. She says she didn't see anything and she just felt a huge pain in the back of her head. She went down, she had a concussion, couldn't get up. The snowboarder said that he was skiing and the woman hit her and that he went down and hurt his shoulder. What happened is after the collision, the snowboarder was down the hill from the woman and he was with his girlfriend. He sent her back up the hill to get contact information from the skier, which she did. Meanwhile, the skier is basically incapacitated on the snow. So then the girlfriend went back down to the snowboarder and they left. It was a month or two or some weeks later that the woman who claims she was struck was summoned as a defendant in a lawsuit. I was hired by her attorney. This is so we'll get right to the equipment examination. I was fortunate enough to be able to get all this equipment. This is the right ski of the woman's skier. This is where the toe piece was. Toe piece was fractured off during this collision. So here you can see the plastic polycarbonate was fractured here. There's aluminum sub-base plate that was also fractured. This is the bottom of the toe piece that was broken away. Better photographs, you can see the fracture surface along here. Of course, it fails where there's what's called stress risers, which is where the bores or holes are for where the mounting screws went down. Aluminum fractured. What was interesting about this toe piece is there was no external marks on it indicating any large force application that would have fractured it. Okay, this is the base plate that's still on the ski. You can see the direction of fracture. This piece of metal here is pushed forward. This little ear also pushed forward. So that gives a clue as to the direction of force. This is a tensile failure, meaning the plastic failed in tension. This is the tip of the snowboard of the guy who was filing the lawsuit. What's interesting about these marks is that they aren't consistent with normal riding. During normal riding, if a snowboard or ski goes over an object in the snow, the contact will be down low along the running surface. This obviously is not the running surface. It's a tip that's designed to deflect the snowboard over and around things, particularly powder. So what this shows is this snowboard encountered something up high. So this is very unusual. This is the right heel piece from the woman's ski. Note these ears here that stick up when the boot is in the binding. This is the tab that also you push down to release the binding. There's some black material transfer here, and both of these ears are rather sharp in nature. So it turns out they correspond quite well in to the separation between these marks. Also, the shape of these marks means that when this snowboard hit the heel piece of the ski, it was deflected to its right. So the marks went this way as the snowboard rode up and over the back of her ski. This is the right heel piece or right boot heel from the woman's ski. These marks right here are a little unusual. They almost look like the graphics to some extent because they're the same color. Also note that the cuff here is pushed in, whereas over here the cuff is out a little bit. And so that's asymmetric, doesn't look normal. These are the snowboard boots that the guy was riding. He rode goofy foot, so he rode with his right foot in front. Note here the outsole, black rubber and curved up at the toes. This is a close-up version of the curved toe with the ribbed tread. Just another view showing the parallel nature of the ribbed outsole. Here is the rear view of the helmet from the woman's skier who said she was hit in the back. There's circular impressions in the top rear of the helmet here. There's also some scuffs down here. These are obviously related to something hitting the helmet and not as a result of her skiing into something head first. What I did is photograph the helmet with scaling tape in it. Then I put those photographs into AutoCAD and scale it. You can see here's an inch, 0.9988. That's close enough for this kind of work. And then I draw circles that fit the radius of curvature of these marks. Then I can actually get the dimensions of those circles from AutoCAD. And that gives me some information as to the size of the object that created those impressions. Here is the GoPro camera that the guy said he was not using. He did produce it because he had mentioned he had it, although initially he said he wasn't using it. He said it was in his coat pocket, and then later he said, no, I didn't even have it in my pocket. It was back at the condo because the battery was dead. However, we got it and I examined it. Again, I usually put some kind of scaling device in any photographs I take. So here's one of the front of the GoPro. Here's the lens. Here's a front button, again with scaling tape, scaled to 1/2 inch here. So again, I can then draw around this button with a circle and then get the dimensions of that button. Here's a button on the side too. Turns out these buttons are the exact same dimension in terms of radius as the marks on the back of the woman's helmet. So back to the equipment examination, the woman's skis didn't have any damage other than a broken toe piece. Her right ski boot had striations on the back of the right boot heel. Snowboard boots, no marks at all, but the curved up toe with the ribbed outsole had separation on the ribs that were pretty much identical to those on the back of the ski boot. As far as the binding on the woman's ski, the toe piece, there weren't any marks on it indicating that she had skied head first or forward into anything. And there was no marks indicating how it would have received the force to break it. The helmets, the woman's helmet showed circular impressions on its rear aspect, nothing on the front. The helmet for the snowboarder didn't really have any marks on it, but it did have a GoPro mounting bracket on the front of it. And it's got circular buttons on several aspects that were of the same dimension as the curved marks in the back of the woman's helmet. So this is how I put it all together. I didn't show the snowboard running up over the back of her heel, but it did, I'm sure of that. His right boot, goofy foot, so that's the leading foot, ran into the heel on the left side, generated some forces into the toe piece. Here's the GoPro camera. As he engages the woman, he undoubtedly pitches forward. He's going faster than her. And when he pitches forward, the GoPro camera goes into the rear of her helmet and makes some marks. Here's how the binding was fractured. Force generated here, pushes forward through the boot, which has a distributed loading surface in the front, causes the toe piece to fracture forward. Toe pieces usually don't take a whole lot of forward force during normal use, so they aren't overbuilt in that direction, and that's what caused it to fail. So the snowboarder claimed he was hit by the skier and injured. He left the scene of the collision. He did claim that he went to some service, ski patrol or some booth at the bottom and reported things, although no information ever was obtained from that source, even though it was requested, so it probably didn't exist. Snowboarder later claimed a shoulder injury and he sued the skier. He maintained he wasn't using the GoPro camera. However, the evidence that I viewed said that's not true. So the defense attorney who I was working for filed a motion with a judge in the court to obtain electronic records from the camera and home electronic equipment from the plaintiff. This is a very unusual request, as it's an invasion of privacy, really. But the judge granted that, and I think to a large extent it was because of the report I wrote showing all this evidence. The data, nothing at home had data except the GoPro camera itself. So in looking at those files, the GoPro camera only contained a time-lapse recording of a butterfly hatching. The digital forensic lab reported that this is a common way to scrub files, because with a time lapse, depending on the time interval, you take a lot of photographs. So it actually overwrites every bit of available disk space. Whereas if you just delete a file, it removes the label, but all the data remains behind. So the judge granted that. He ordered the plaintiff to pay for the costs of the digital forensics lab because of the cost was significant. And I'm not sure how the judge was viewing this other than the plaintiff was being deceptive. He didn't rule there was spoliation based on the destruction of any those files on the camera, but he said that the camera memory wipe could be brought up during the trial for the jury to think about. Then about a week before the trial, the plaintiff withdrew their claim and left the state back to Texas, I think. And that was the end of it. I don't know what the follow-up was in terms of any money transfer from the plaintiff to the defendant for all the costs of defending the case. But one of the things in my mind that I never really resolved is, why would a plaintiff's attorney take a case like that without first doing a little bit of homework? So that's the first presentation here. If you have any questions or thoughts, you'd like to get a hold of me, you saw my CV at the beginning, and feel free to give me a call or send me an email.